Yeah, so the first question I would have is actually concerning to what extent today landscape design or landscape architecture is used or considered as a part of memorial projects from your experience.
Yeah, this is a very important question. I think it differs very much when you think about the country you're talking about. Like in Austria, we don't have this much culture of commemoration. It only started like 10 years ago, and now landscape architects are invited to deal with projects on commemoration in Vienna, for example, like to deal with places where there used to be synagogues that were destroyed during the pogroms. So it needs this process of awareness of to work with the history of the site first, and then next step is that those who are responsible for the site, and they know that there is a special profession, landscape architects, and then they invite them to participate in this project. It's a much better situation in Germany. I think that has been realized a lot of projects in the last.
But more often, who's the one who invites you? So is it the artist, for example, who participates in creating the memorial object? Is this municipality or the owner of the site or it is someone else?
It can be all of them. If it's a project when there is a memorial or a museum or information center designed, then they first ask the architect, and then the architect invites landscape architects, or they work together to design the outer space of the museum, like the entrance, and to work with the site itself. Or then, there's one example, this Turner Temple, which was just like an empty plot in Vienna in the 16th district, and then it was the municipality who approached landscape architects to deal with the site, and there was a landscape architecture competition. So it depends if it's going together with buildings, or if it comes from the owner side, municipality.
And from your experience, and maybe from your colleagues' opinion, is it easier to work with a place that has some infrastructure and where everything is more or less clear, or with abandoned place where you're just given carte blanche on one hand, but on the other hand you don't have the kind of clear vision what people want from you?
That's a difficult question. No, I think you can't say that's easier. This one is easier than the other one. It depends more on the impact of the place, or on the function of the place. If you have to combine different functions, like recreation area, like this place, with commemoration, I think that's more difficult than if you have to design the surroundings of an information center to NS Memorial.
Yes, I'm asking it because of a particular reason. So if we would be here 15 years ago, then obviously we would see here just a wasteland and nothing. And today we come, we see kind of cultivated area with which possibly it's easier to interact. But on the other hand, you say that it's hard to combine sometimes. But what was the motivation for you and your students to participate particularly in this project, in Jungfrau project?
I'm working on history of landscape architecture at the university, and I have explored this in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. There's a special focus on Jewish women landscape architects from Vienna, and on their projects, on their biographies, on their impact on landscape architecture profession in Austria. And this was the point when Karen came in, because she has found my articles, and she approached me and she asked me, is there a Jewish garden art or Jewish landscape architecture style? And I said no. I mean, because they were part of those women landscape architects. They were part of the Viennese bourgeoisie, and they were part of the profession. They were pioneers within the profession, landscape architecture, because they were the first women. And we have to be aware of their contribution to the culture, to the development of the profession, the development of women emancipation, and I followed the history of these women in exile as well, and so I thought it would be, for me personally, it would be a really great experience to work on such a site, to be part of Karen's project, and it is I would say it's still not neglected, but we don't deal that much at university with designing memorials. So I think I thought that it's very important for students, and it's a really great chance to be part of this project.
And did you have any discussions concerning that with the students? So I presume the 6 students that came, this is maybe a fraction of the group you're teaching. So what was the reaction of your students when you offered this as a, I don't know even, is it the kind of study trip, or how do you formulate it? Or is there summer assignment, a project?
No, we have this special course we call Global Design Studio, and this is every year another lecturer is going to give this course, and we're always going abroad. And I just have announced this project, and I think it's rather more because of the COVID situation that it was not clear if we can travel to Riga. I mean, the students, they are a little bit tired of this hybrid or online teaching. So yeah, I think it's more this restriction or this uncertainty that that prevented some to participate in the course. So when the course was open for like 12 students, and there's more signed in, but then they dropped off because we postponed always our travel year. And we just said, okay, we start in March, and they said, no, we start in April, and so we lost some students then.
But as I understand, it was from the very beginning announced that the trip would be to Riga and that they will be working on this Jungfernhof project. And so those students who signed up, these were those students who consciously wanted to work on this project. And so did they come up with any ideas already during the course? No, in fact not, no. But we started with some assignments to introduce the topic. So we had some reading assignments and discussed these texts, and we asked them to analyze landscape design of memorials. We picked out several memorials covering larger periods. So we had monuments of the early post-war years, and then very recent monuments from different regional aspects. So we had some in Serbia as well as in Germany. So we tried to involve them in the topic. And as a landscape architect, usually we first go and visit the site and make a survey, and then we have work on ideas. And this time it was just the other way around because of this COVID. And I think that there is there's some benefit from it, that we just try to introduce this topic, which is really challenging for them, by reading assignments. And to what extent generally these topics of developing of gardens or public green areas and public landscape areas and memory and Holocaust overlap? Because I've just working on this project, I came across the collection of articles about Jews and gardens in Germany under Nazis, and there particularly they dealt with the history of Stuttgart, where they had Reichsgartenschau from 1939, which served as a deportation site Stuttgart Jews to Jungfernhof. So to what extent do you, as a historian of landscape architecture, encounter these weird overlappings? Because I guess most of the people, they consider that landscape architecture and landscape design is something as distant from Holocaust as possible. So how often in reality these stories overlap in some weird ways?
In every project we deal with a site, and every site has a history. And I think like in most sites this Holocaust or UNES period is like a topic. I just remember talking to a colleague, and he was invited to have a student design competition in Tyrol, in the western part of Austria, and they said, oh, they do have like a park or square or something. They don't know how to deal with it in the center of the small village, and they thought that it would be a good chance to invite students like here to develop different ideas for this site. And then when they visited the site, then there was like a monument, and my colleagues addressed the mayor and said, what about this monument? And then said, oh no, that has to deal something with the Nazi period. So, I mean, it was...
So it was seen as something irrelevant for the design work, so it's just...
No, it is really relevant, but what I wanted to explain is like that even if it's not obvious that the site has a connection to this part of history or to history at all. I mean, a lot of people, they just walk around and they think that like it's pure new nature has ever been like that before, so they don't think about the history and development of this place, and it might have been different functions before, and there might have been like designers or gardeners who have thought about it, who had their ideas about the place. So, and same with history. So, I mean, it's overlapping all the time, and you always have to learn about the history of the site to go in. That's what I teach students, like that they have to go in archives as well. It can be like professional archives, or it can be like municipal archives where they store like texts, or it can also be like site plans and sketches, photos. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll start torturing you. Stop torturing you with that, probably. Thank you so much for it.
Okay.
We will start. We're very thankful for your productive work during these 3 days. I hope it was interesting. So you were lucky to have good weather. So all of our presentations today will be recorded if you don't have any objections. So we also have guests from 2 institutions here which deal with relevant topics. So we have Mr. Gunnar Snagels, who is the head of Riga City Agency of Monuments, and he was also present at the exploration done by the team of Dr. Richard Freund in Jungfernhof. And we have representatives of Žanes Lipke Memorial, which is one of the major memory institutions in Latvia, and also deals with issues of sites and memory and monuments and so on. And so they also have in their team the representative of Austrian service abroad. So we have like +1 Austrian in the audience. So from my side, I can say that it was super interesting working with you. Although I was met and preventing you from working normally, but still, I think I've tried to help at some point. So We also will have here Karen Frostag, who is the very much inspiration behind the project and the manager and the one who is lobbying for the creation of memorial in New. And so, any other talks, I'll give the floor to Ulrike probably, or to students, or so the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Ilya. It was really a pleasure to be here and to work on this project. We are full to Karen, who contacted me 2 years ago and asked me if we can contribute to this project. And then we decided that it would be good to have a design course with master students from the University of Natural Science and Life Sciences at BOKU Vienna. So we are a group of 6 students, master students. We started somewhere in March in Vienna. Due to this COVID, we postponed everything. So we started with reading assignments to grasp this really challenging issue. The students were asked to analyze memorials of NS Holocaust sites as well, to get a feeling how to deal with these sites, these specific sites from a landscape architectural perspective. And I say it was really a challenging issue because it was a new issue for everyone and very fruitful. So the students were very engaged in Vienna and in Riga. They only arrived on Monday early afternoon, so we had 3.5 very intense days working on the projects, refining their ideas they had already in Vienna. They were working on how to commemorate the history of this site. So they worked in pairs, and we have 3 groups with different design ideas and concepts. They have prepared a presentation of about 10 slides. Every presentation will take 10 to 15 minutes. Every group will present their concept, and then I ask you to engage in a discussion. It's still work in progress. The students still have 10 days to work on, to finalize it in Vienna, so they can revise the project, include your remarks. It's like a work in progress. So, yeah. So we will start with Hannah and Aaron. Please, I hand over.
Okay, so hello and welcome to our project, which is called Building Connections for the Jungfernhof area. I will shortly introduce ourselves. I worked with Hannah Wolfinger, and my name is Aaron Pitschmann. And as already said, we are students from the BOKU in Vienna. Here you can see first sketches from Monday. We have been there with Ilya, and it was a really nice day, and we made here some sketches and some photos, and it was the first impression when we came here. It was really impressive area, and yeah, you can see here some sketches. Then we come to our strategic concept, which was the idea of connecting this area of Jungfernhof with the other 2 memorials, which are also in this area, Rumbuller Forest and Salaspil Memorial. And we made this access from Jungfernhof, and it ends up in the Salaspil Memorial. And when we look inside the area, which is here, this is like kind of the area. We also wanted to connect the today with the past. It was like really important for us because we've been there and there were a lot of people like riding with the bike, going for a walk, especially like in this here at the riverside. And we thought nearly nobody knows something about the past, and so we wanted to connect the today with the past. And also made this access which ends like in the Salaspil Memorial and Rumbulla Forest, and we wanted to include like the ruins, then the tree growth, which was also like really impressive for us, and then it ends up like in the where we expect a mass grave like in this area. So we came up here with this ground plan, which you can see here. We wanted to make this access. Here you can see the ruins which are remaining. Then it crosses here, the tree growth, and it ends up like here to the mass grave. And now Hannah will continue.
Yes, as Aaron said, our axis, and I will tell you something more about in detail. That's how we imagine the entrance to this axis, connecting to the path and on the riverside, which, how he said, we recognized it's really highly frequented and used by cycling and walking their dogs and doing sports and whatever. So this should be our entrance to the memorial site, with a kind of info board made of steel, like this little sketch here in the right corner. And we imagine it like with vegetation, and like in these small pictures you could get a small a small insight. And this is the first step, and if you go further in this axis, the second connection would be the ruins which are remaining. Here in the photo on the right side you can see the ruins which are elevated on a small hill, I would say, and are quite impressive, but without any information there. So we thought of including an info board as well, and this axis you can see on the right side is like you can walk on it and walk through, and the axis somehow ends at the ruins, and you have some information there, and starts again after the ruins. When we came to the third spot, the growth, the tree growth, where you can walk through the trees and have different heights of vegetation and could stay here. As you see in the picture, when the sun goes down, it reflects on the floor and on the grass, and you have some information there as well. And if you look further, it's ending up in the mass grave, or where somehow the expectations are that there is a mass grave. And we wanted to highlight this and frame it so no one would walk and step on it, and let just the vegetation grow as naturally as it is, and have some information as well, because it's really needed that people recognize that something happened there. And as you can see, you can stand here and look in this direction where you look at the Salaspils memorial as well. Yes. So building connections is our project, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm absolutely amazed of the quality of work is done here, and also the context of your understanding of the place, because you made these, you joined the dots, right, in this line. There should be another joint, right, which is the station, which is a further afield, you know, in the mainland. But otherwise, it's perfect understanding of the spot. Perhaps it is prematurely to think exactly of the very execution of the design of the spot, because we don't know much about it yet. But you understood perfectly the landscape, and that's the first big step into the right direction. Thank you so much.
I would actually have a question concerning this reflecting surface. So as I understand, the idea is that this pathway all through going, you know, up the hill and going under the trees and going up to the mass grave area, it's kind of reflecting, so people are walking on it and you know, thinking of it, something. So I would mention two issues. For you to know, I'm the person who always comes up with criticism and is bad, but it's just a bit of, from my experience, first of all, can there be issues, for example, people being kind of afraid walking on reflective surface? So I mean, how, if you could a bit detail what sort of surface it is, and second, is it slippery or not? Because with our climate, with our winters, it's kind of an issue for the surface not to be slippery. Yeah. So if you could detail, for example, what materials can be used to implement your idea, but to, you know, for people not, sorry to say, women in skirts, for example, not being challenged walking on this pathway.
Yes, in reflection or in lightning, we don't mean like actual light, we mean like light stone, like a light gray or something, which is really lighter than the surrounding. And so you can see it from like meters away, and not like actual light, and not slippery material, we mean like stone material, but just a light stone.
Like concrete, and we wanted to work also like with this cartoon steel, and yeah, this should be out of concrete, but yeah, the exact surface we will work with.
When we were walking to the site, we saw these materials as well, like at the train station and yes, at this memorial, and we imagine it somehow like that.
Okay, I see that. Karen, a question from Gunnar. So Karen.
Yes. Can everyone hear me? Can I speak?
Yeah.
Okay. It is thrilling to see it. I think it is graphically beautiful and clear and instructive. And you did what I hoped, which is that the landscape piece is about joining all the elements. And you did a great job joining the different memorials nearby, but also at the site, and this respectfulness about how we combine the past with the present. So there is already a promenade, and there is already present activity, and you were able to really bring those two worlds together. You also provided a lot of context, and I think that is so necessary in memorials, is that we understand context. So what is that ruin nearby, and what is the history of the site in relationship to the history of the camp? And you really opened that discussion. I was extremely interested in your portrait of the mass grave. To me, this is a major turning point in
Recording in
I don't know, do we
progress.
just get disconnected? No, maybe not. Okay. I had originally thought about a canopy, which would prevent that kind of growth. So your idea was very appealing to me. I think those are my main reactions. And in terms of two other things, in terms of whatever memorial we develop, we will need to think about traffic and how do we create pathways that help people move around the space. How do we create lighting? How do we create signage? Those are all additional components that will enhance how people experience the space. And in terms of writing and the metal plaques that you sort of inserted, we're still going to be researching the camp and researching, for instance, letters from some of the victims. There may be lines that we extract that could be quotes that we include in those kinds of ways. So just suggesting that makes us more attentive to that possibility as we develop the research. But thank you. This is a wonderful start and a very impressive development of ideas and connections between all of these sites.
Yeah, very impressive presentation. I came to that place from the station, of course, which is at the top of the map, and I hadn't thought about entry from the Riverside Walk, but of course there's a huge amount of foot traffic on that walk, so that's a very good idea. But I would suggest also an alternative entry point coming from the station. But about the thing marking out the graves, where you had, I think, a metal thing around it, have you seen the sites at Rumbula and Bitjanieke, which have got similar things but in concrete? And the question is there any reason to have a similar sort of design, or, as you've put it there, have it in metal? That's just the question.
When it comes to connection or connecting these places, we wanted not to do exactly the same. So this one is like outstanding on its own, but somehow connected. So the same idea, but a little bit different, I guess.
Any other comments? Yeah, I guess Ulrike and Julie are not allowed to comment as professors. From the colleagues? Okay.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much. So we pass the mic to.
I just want to add a general comment to all presentations. Due to the shortage of time, we asked the students to show their ideal design on that concept and only go in detail on one or 2 points, not everything, because it was not enough time. So that you can see what direction.
If you're afraid that we don't have time today, so no, that's wrong. But yeah, but okay. So next group.
So we're now going to present our design concept for the site of Jungfernhof concentration camp. Our design concept is called Retelling History. Oh, sorry. And so at first we're starting with an analysis of the site. So when we were there, the first thing we noticed was that it is a quite peaceful and idyllic place, which is kind of a contrast to the history. And we also saw that there are many natural elements that are very beautiful and also contributing to the idyllic scenery. There's also a nice view over the river and you can see the city. And we also found some different atmospheres. So there are open spaces with meadows, and there are also some denser places with the tree groves. And we also noticed that there were many people using the space for recreation and for sports. There were people passing by. And we thought that this is a positive aspect because the site is already known, that people go there and they use it, and so this is a potential for a memorial. And our design idea started when we were preparing, or when we were doing some research. We were handed some texts also by Karen and also some witness reports, and when we were reading them, we kind of felt that we wanted to retell their stories, and we came up with the idea to integrate quotes from survivors that describe the situation during the concentration camp times and work with that.
So the design concept was that we would like to implement 5 commemorative stops, and you can see them located here on the map. And the idea was that the 5 stops should reference the events that happened on the site, and they should reference them in different ways. And we thought about implementing some design elements and interventions and also signage to show what happened on this particular parts on the site. So, and also what we wanted to say is that those stops don't have a particular order, that you can just walk around from one to another. Doesn't matter where you're coming from, if you're coming from the riverside or from the parking lot side. And yeah, so the first, I say now the first and second stop, but there's no order. So, but the first stop you see on top, this is the arrival spot, and then in the middle there, or is it a pointer? Okay. No, this was the wrong one. Where should I push? Here. Okay. Here, this was the arrival spot. And then here, there we said this would be the spot where the barracks were located, like they were located around this area. And then here are the tree groves, and we thought about locating a stop there as a reference to the Hochwald where the people were shot, and here by the ruins there should also be a stop, and then here where the potential mass grave is. And yeah, here are some short, like not very beautiful sketches, but we have details later, but just to show you what we thought about for each of those stops. And the first stop, the arrival spot, is, as I showed you before, when you come from the parking lot. And there we thought about implementing a rocky path to reference the walk that the people had to take from the station to the concentration site. And on the side we thought about implementing signage where, as she said before, where there you could read the quotes from the witnesses' reports. And the next stop is the barracks, and we read in the witnesses' report a lot of the people referenced the beds, or not really beds, but the places where they slept, as like they were so small, like bookshelves. So we thought about creating huge bookshelf, like looking like bookshelves, and as a reference to that, and also where we could reference those quotes. that were written in the reports. But also we will see details of that later. It's just a sketch. And the next stop is the forest stop, as I said before, as a reference to the Rumbala forest. And here we thought about implementing tree trunks that would resemble the victims that were shot there, and they should be like in human heights, like 180, 150. So when you go there, you pass through all those trunks, and on the trunks there should also be written those quotes, and also about some information about what happened there. And the next stop is the river Daugava. Yeah. And this is at the end of the ruins, so those should be the ruins. And at the end, there is a platform where you have a very nice view to the river. So actually, when the people go there, this should be reference a huge frame. And when people go there, they have this beautiful view to the river through the frame. And then there we also wanted to insert a quote where the people describe in the witnesses' reports that it was so cold that the water was frozen, not in the river, the drinking water was frozen that they had. So they had to drink water from the river, and then diseases spread. So we wanted to write this to the frame so that people see this difference, this beautiful view, and actually to the river, which to us is now very beautiful, but at the time, at that place, the river was the reason for a lot of people dying on diseases. And the last stop is the memorial, the main memorial site where probably the mass grave will be located. And yeah, this should be a place where the people can commemorate in silence and walk around. We thought about installing a wooden path that goes around the rectangle, and in the middle there should be like a wildflower field, and I don't know the word, what is it called? This one? Yeah, like
a banister.
Yeah, like a banister, where there is the possibility to write the names of the victims. And yeah, but we also have a detail of that later. Yeah.
And so with the materials we wanted to use the same materials for all the stops, because as we're not connecting them with a path or something, as we wanted to be spontaneous, the people wonder what is there, and then they go there, and then they have an interest in that object, and then they read the quotes, and resulting in an interest for the history. But to kind of connect them in a design way, we wanted to use the same materials for all the objects, and we were thinking about steel sheets, some kind of dark steel, and also combined with some light wood, so that especially the wood stems or the tree trunks we were thinking about in the tree grove. We just using those stems and also using the same wood with the other objects. And for the mass grave, we're thinking about a wildflower bed, and when we were at the site, we noticed that there were many beautiful flowers in the meadow, and we wanted to use them, and so use more of the flowers so that it is a flower bed, but with natural flowers. And so a bit into detail where the forest or the tree grove is, we wanted to resemble the Rumbala forest, where many people were shot during a mass killing, and like Lena already said, the tree trunk should resemble those victims. And we, so now I'm going to read the quote we're thinking about integrating there. We were told that 1,500 people were brought to a fishnet factory in Dünamünde, later we heard that those people were shot in a mass killing in the forest. So the intention is that people go there because they don't know what this object is, and then they read the quote and then they start to think about the history of this place. And the next one is the actual memorial site, so the mass grave. We also have a quote for that, which kind of also sums up the horrible things that happened there. Dynamite arrived for the purpose of blasting out a depression to use as a mass grave. Potatoes were planted atop of the grave. So this is kind of a really absurd situation, and in our thinking it resembles those horrible times in history. And the third detail is where the barracks were standing, and the kind of bookshelf resemble the bunk beds where the inmates had to sleep in. And also there, people can also lie in there and experience that feeling themselves and see how the people had to live in those times. And that's it from us. Thank you.
Any questions, any comments? Karen, yeah, go on, please.
So I should talk, okay. Heard things.
Karen, maybe you can try turning off the video because otherwise it's lagging. So please try turning off the video and then talk. Not because we don't want to see you, but because we have unstable connection. Go on.
So another wonderful presentation with original ideas and a great graphic presentation of your ideas. And you also integrated some new concepts. And I was particularly struck as, you know, in contrast to the other presentation, you identified a different entry point. And so it'll be very important as we develop the memorial, what will be the entry point to the memorial, because it is such a large park. I also appreciated the different key elements that you addressed, and that you made an attempt to introduce discomfort. And one of the lessons that I learned when I was working on the Vienna project, and I don't know if you're familiar with Nora Sternfeld, she's a cultural historian in Austria, is that she really addressed the conflict or the issue around aesthetics and dealing with histories of murder. And how do we, you know, in the midst of this beautiful, picturesque recreation park, how do we introduce such a dark subject without, you know, succumbing to beauty? So the issue of aesthetics is an important one. And so the idea that you created an entranceway with a rocky path that would be kind of disorienting to people as they entered was very interesting to me. Also, the barracks, that you introduced an experiential element to the barracks so that people could sit and lie and experience what that might be like. So it'll be important that we really accurately find the dimensions of the barracks. The other component, and I don't know if this is possible, is that one part of the issue of the barracks is that the roofs were leaking and that there was icy, you know, water coming in. You know, how do we add to that experience? Also with the water and the notion of contamination, that was another extremely interesting element. You know, how do we represent contaminated water? How can we do that actually at the site? Is that important? And introducing the Dunemunde experience, I think, is incredibly important, because what we often think about when we think about the Holocaust is we think about murder, but we don't think about other aspects like how people were lied to, like theft, all of these other components that were part of this industry, of this machinery of murder. So the Duna Mundi was an interesting addition. And also, and this is something for Latvians to talk about, there are so many trees in Latvia. And so how do we create information in a forest, in trees, so that we understand the multiple roles that trees played in Latvia's history? So those are my quick responses. And I really liked the presentation of the mass grave, the idea of maybe using a fence as a storytelling component. Very stimulating, great new ideas, wonderful presentation. Thank you.
I would also like to comment very briefly on the idea of bunk beds, because there is a long and discussion that basically does not have a proper answer to what extent the Holocaust Memorial should recreate the Holocaust experience. Yeah, and for example, in Stutthof concentration camp in northern Poland, to which also many Latvian Jews and German and Austrian Jews were sent. For example, you can there lie in bunk bed, and a colleague of mine whose mother was imprisoned there, she did that, and she felt like a very weird experience, and she definitely did not describe it as a memorial experience she wanted to get, but the temptation was too big. And on the other hand, in Janis Lipke Memorial here in Riga, there the bunker in which the Jews were hidden intentionally is made that you cannot enter it. So the idea is that you cannot recreate the experience. So here to me it seemed interesting that you opted for this possibility to experience this kind of pressure and discomfort in a very peaceful and setting. So all of you emphasized how nice is the area. But I actually liked the idea, you mentioned the bookshelves. And thinking of this area as a public area, if we can make it as a kind of public, book, how it's called, book swapping library, it also can be an interesting option. Yeah, so people kind of symbolically reuse this instrument of oppression, of humiliation, as something kind of positive. Yeah. So this also seemed to me very interesting, all these layers and connotations. Thank you so much. It's really a beautiful presentation, a lot of great ideas.
Yeah, very nice presentation. Yes, the idea of the personal experiences, of course, that is very, very good, very important, because it is always more impressive than just plain statistics. About the bunk beds, the Occupation Museum here in Riga has got, or did have, and probably will have, a reproduction of Siberian barracks with bunk beds, which has always been popular with people. And it's also been described as giving the right sort of impression. But I've got a practical question about the barracks, the bunk beds. You'll have children playing on them, climbing up to the top. Are there any safety concerns? And the other thing is it'll be outside in the wind and the rain. What sort of material would you expect them to be made of?
So the material, we said it would be wood, like the shelves would be wood, and like Rahmen. Was heißt Rahmen? The frame would be like made of steel. And about the like the topic with the children, that we also thought about it, and we don't have a solution yet. It was just an idea. I mean, they're not like, you can build them not so high, because we planned it like for 118 meters or 2 meters high, but it could be lower, so that it's not so horrible if you fall down. But yeah, that's a problem. But we have no solution yet. Yeah.
But a solution might also be to add like a ground, like there is in playgrounds. So that would be a possibility, because I think playgrounds also have stuff to climb on. So there's definitely a technical solution for that, I think.
Again, thank you for good work. The 5-step approach to this area would be a perfect blueprint if we would thought about it like 15 years ago, when this land was intact, right? When there would not have been any public space created. But now, I don't want to work here as a Spaßverderber, somebody who is killing a joy of just blue sky thinking out of the box. But when it boils down to practicality, is that the municipality would allow us to do one step, perhaps out of these 5, and that would be that memorial place of the grove. And you suggested a fantastic idea how to make it disappear. It would be a meadow. It wouldn't be gravel, okay? It wouldn't be stone, which will stand out, but you would make it a meadow. And that I found a genius idea, and that we would sell it to the municipality. Absolutely, thank you.
Well, concerning selling to the municipality, we don't know what municipality would accept or would not accept. I think Gunnars would be, in this audience, the one who would be most qualified to speak about, but actually we don't know. So, and I think that's why this project for us was important, because you came in a moment when this site is in a kind of a limbo. Yeah, so as we discussed, the development project that existed is put on hold. We don't know what happens with this project, so we actually cannot be sure what can and what cannot be implemented. And I think it's a good moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's no reason. There's no a priori reason why something would not be allowed. The responsible agents or the responsible council, which is the Riga Monuments Council, of which I'm just a member, would look at any sort of proposal and look at it on its merits. So there's no reason to think that something like this will not be approved. Also, there's no reason to think it will be approved, but it will be looked at on its merits.
So there can be all kind of bureaucratic objections from the property department and so on. Now it's become a bit more complicated. We discussed on the very first day. So the administrative changes that actually had a great impact on this area, but I think it's we don't have to think that all of that is pure fantasy. I mean, any other? Okay, Maja Meyer, also from Lipke Memorial.
Okay, I just wanted to say that it felt very, very personal story, like on a human scale. It's not just a polite place where to go and commemorate, but you actually feel these bookshelves, etc. It's on your skin, and that's why when I hope it will somehow end up in reality, and I hope there will be these quotes also, because that's the connection from that person to me. When I can feel myself in his or her shoes, the only thing is that don't lose the names of these people that you quote, because that's the most important thing. Yeah, I know this person. That's because the Holocaust somehow took away the personality of these people. Also, even the survivors, we are calling only numbers, but the most important thing is that I know, oh, this is Trudy, for example. Yeah, I know one of the survivors. Only I read about her. I didn't have a pleasure to meet her. So it would be my suggestion: stay as personal as you can.
Okay, so Thank you. And we're passing the floor to the third group.
It's on?
And Maya also speaks as a mother of a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid who knows what kids and memorials mean.
I think you have to wait till it's here. No, I think you have like this is like the where you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Where do you put?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we are the third group. My name is Michaela Hanzlova and this is Ina Pragner. And we would like to present you the third proposal. So as also our other two groups presented, we had some like sketches and thoughts about when we went to the site. And the first was, wow, such a beautiful recreational space, beautiful water body, beautiful river. And also when we passed to the potential mass grave and like the surrounding, we even couldn't realize that in this place could something happen like it happened. So our thoughts were that this space is completely missing something about the past or about the history. But also we found that still some suggestions are there as ruins, trees, or also now the study of the possible mass grave and still also a trail. And so these were our first thoughts. When we started to think about how to make this concept or the trail or commemorative walking, because in the end we call it commemorative walking, it starts from the train station because we, I think already first day, went to the train station when we saw the Soviet commemorative monument, but there was nothing about the event from 1941. So we thought to start there on the train station. So this would be a journey because the train arrived to the train station. The second section or second part would be this. This is the journey. This would be the arrival, and this is a stay. And this is our like walking that we want to do. And the first part starts from the train station, and here we would like to introduce also the sign, and it should look like this. So you enter and you arrive to the train station, you see some information, or we didn't follow in details how this should like, because we hadn't so much time, but the first what you should see is this line, which should represent some informations about the arrival, about exact day, and also that it was 30 of November, and what weather was and how it was. And so we would continue this trail through because now the surrounding is mostly the housing spaces and schools. So we would like to conduct this line through all this first trail. And here we start, you can see already the second part, which is the, it's arriving, but it's still a journey. It's the second part, and after the shopping mall and the section, which is here, you have the first sign, which is not so clear to the concentration camp. There is not a written concentration camp, but there is a sign to the site. I'm so sorry, to the Jugendhof, but it's invisible. So we would like to make here the second step, like with the information about that some of the prisoners and victims were conducted to the other camp where they had to build this camp, and we want to make this information here. And after the line is continuing here till the point that you arrive to this section where is all the road like this, and through all this road you see the wall. So we thought that in this section we can continue with the line on the wall, and on this wall we would continue also the text, which should remember that period, what happened in these 3 months. And yeah, and now it's like arrival. After arrival, it's stay, and it's the third part.
Yes, so the third part, stay, is a bit different, but also like a walking experience. But in the third part, like in the stay part, we want to that people experience the survivors, like what they said in the reports, through sound. And so we have like 6 stops, which like, oh, the first one is not here, okay. So we have 6 spots that, like guide you through the site. And where do I, okay. Like the first one, or it is also not like, we don't have like numbers, but it would be like here, and you have like some sound installation, like you can see here, not really because it's overlapping, and it would be a arrival story of a survivor, like it would be about the arrival at the site, and then here it would be a story about the barrack, here about the mass grave, here about the hospital and the water mill, because there was like the sewing workshop where they repaired things, and here like about the manor house and the river, like we heard before about the poisoning. And here it would be like an ending or like continuation point to Rumbula or Salaspils, because there could be like a walking trail to those sites also. Yes, and like and the points where they look, there will be guided like viewing points to look at those sites. So, like you can see here, we have chosen the mass grave, that you like have stepping stones that guide you to through those stops, and then you have like a sound installation that will tell you the story, and also like guiding where to look at. And here we would have like the mass grave. It would also be like in the other group a meadow, and we would like surround it with the stepping stones to that you can see it. And yes, so here, and then to our materials, it would look like this, but in a color that is continuing through the whole experience. And this is an example for the meadow and the paving. Yes, so thank you for your attention.
I think the idea is very interesting. It's obvious you thought very much about how the people will find their way. It's clear from your presentation you thought how they would find their way, how they would see which where to look, with the last point about the mass grave, with the arrow pointing to it. And I think your idea is very interesting, with the strip and text telling them the story of the place and what happened there.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think it's very important to have this connection from this railway station to the actual place where everything happened. The railways are planning some changes to the railway station itself. In the next 1 or 2 years, they will be putting up some fencing. They'll be putting up a footbridge, which will necessitate the moving of our information stands. And I tend to see to it that when the information stands are moved, there's also something about Jungfrau Moise, which could be the starting point of this walk. Yep, so very good.
Actually, you're the first ones who hear this information about plans of remodeling of Ščirvotava. Raive?
Dan, can we follow? Thank you, first of all, for a great presentation, which, in a way, for me at least, it closes the circle with the first one where we started with those 3 other dots. Now it's the 4th arrived. And following up on what just Gunnar said, it is a matter of practicality then how also the station will work as a point of parking lot for larger bus, which is not foreseen at the moment, and things like that. How will this place start functioning really as a tourism? And what you showed us, that this place can work as a tourism destination, as a tourism route, right, which leads down to the river, to the actual site. And the rest is just a matter of practicality, what works best at the site. But great idea. Thank you.
I would comment that there is one major obstacle at this railway station for tourism. These are actually trains which continue going there. These are both passenger and freight trains. So it's interesting how you interact with these constantly moving objects. It's just an interesting challenge. Yeah, so because most of the memorial objects that I've seen at the train stations, and of course, I mean, Germany and Austria have a lot of these at the deportation sites. Mostly, these are either abandoned stations or these are relatively small objects which are just approached as a city sculpture. So you know, it doesn't matter that there are trains around. And I mean, here it clearly goes from station through the tracks. So it's kind of interesting layers. Yeah, so I think it's a good point, something to reflect on. Karen, unmute yourself and talk, please.
Now, can you hear me? Yeah. Yes? Okay. I feel like I'm yelling across the Atlantic, so please, I don't know how loud I'm talking. Another wonderful presentation. I am struck by the contrast of education in Austria around this subject, and in the US, we are so focused on assessment that it is unusual to have 3 so startling different presentations coming out of one class. And it really speaks to the kind of democratic process of education in Austria. And just how unusual it has been. Love the fact that this starts at the Ščirotava train station. I think you might be aware that we're going to do our opening event there. And Ilya can talk a little bit more, you know, about the complicated political history of that station. But for this project, that it began. So that walk from Ščirotava to Jungfernhof is a really important element to preserve. And I love the idea of these audio, audio towers. We are in touch with 2 brothers who survived and one who is 6 years old who actually describes that walk. And so for any survivors that it would be great to have those voices as part of the audio that we develop. The question about the audio and, you know, what languages will that be in, and also the image of those sound towers. We want people to see them and be attracted to them. They looked a bit authoritarian. So how do we make them so that they're inviting and bring us to them? You know, what is that going to look like? And I don't have those skills, so it's really interesting to entertain these ideas. The other thing that is really important, and this is such a wonderful opportunity to be developing this memorial, because it grows out of the counter-memorial movement and how Europe has really cultivated these very, there's a kind of pattern of what memorials look like. And we're now at a point where we can really break away from that tradition and develop a very fresh approach to memorialization. And memorials are expensive, but in some ways, what your presentations have done is you've emphasized participation, how to make things a little more interactive. So to invest in those components rather than in fancy building materials will be really important. And I really believe this notion of commemorative walking is a wonderful idea, a contemporary idea. And again, the audio opportunities are really interesting, how those will get developed. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Actually, following up on what Karen said, I think that the costs probably are decreasing because the materials are becoming more available and cheaper. So I think actually in a time it would be cheaper to do a memorial object. Yeah, so although it's obviously still a concern, and but I don't know to what extent, by the way, you during your education process you deal with issues like that. And the mic to you, probably. No. It's. I mean, it is sort of a question. You can answer it, or you can go on. I mean, we have like a free format here.
Thank you to the students. It was great to work with you and to feel your engagement within this 3.5 days here in Riga and before in Vienna. So I think I'm so happy to be part of this process, and I do understand Karen's project or as a process of working on this, on commemoration of this site. And I think one result is that, I mean, if apart from building a monument, is that we have learned something through working at the sites, through engaging with the topic, and we bring that back to Vienna and spread it among our colleagues, and we have learned for our life working time as landscape architects, and I think that is a great impact for us, and we are happy to contribute these presentations and the projects to Karen's project, so it can be online. And sure, within Students Project, we work up to the costs of projects, but then we have a lot more time. And as you have seen, we couldn't go in details with the design concept, so it makes no sense to talk about costs, and it wasn't the aim of it. It was just the aim to engage with the topic, and I think, and it's great that we have 3 different approaches to it. So, yeah, thank you very much to everyone.
Points of emphasis, with different approaches, with different media. I mean, be it sight or hearing or touching an issue surface. So I mean, that's really amazing. And and for me, it's important that most of these aspects are those that so far have been not so present in Latvian memorial space in general, public space. Yeah, so we still deal with more kind of traditional approach to commemoration, and the fact that you absolutely didn't have anything figurative, sort of to say. It's also very, very interesting. So this is very much, all three projects are the ones that address emotions, not your kind of understanding what you have learned about memory, how memory should look like. So it addresses people who absolutely know nothing more about the site, more about the memorial tradition, and who are not pressured by the rules how you should behave at a huge memorial with sculptures of whoever. So I think it's also very interesting. It's really, I mean, no one can promise anything, obviously, but it's already this discussion and these projects is sort of a contribution to Latvian memorial space. I would say at least 5 of us Latvians represented here will walk away with ideas boiling in our head. So that's absolutely amazing contribution. Thank you so much. Applause to all of you viewers. So with that, probably we will end the event and say goodbye to Vienna and Boston represented here. Kevin, Julia, thank you for being present. Yeah. So you can wave at me. So yeah, probably we can. Yeah. So now when we're done with that, I have like 2 practical questions. So one would be, to what extent you would be ready to share the final results? So for example, so the projects will go to Karen, but for example, to what extent these can be somehow archived in one Latvian heritage institutions, to what extent you would be interested in it?
Up to the students. If they want it to store somewhere, want it to include in that discussion in Riga and Latvia. From the university side, I think it's no problem, because we used to work with communities, and then we hand them over the ideas to students' project. You always have to be sure that it's nothing you can construct. I mean, that we are not. You would like to have hire a landscape architecture office to develop these ideas, these concepts, and to make like construction plans, and then it can build it. But I think it's not. We are not at that point now that anything will be realized soon. It's just, I think that there are projects that contribute to discussion in what direction it goes, and I think there's no problem from the university side. And if you agree with, then.
So consider this idea, because I would presume it's very valuable if these projects are available. So I don't know to what extent. So we can further discuss with Karen. She would be willing to publish it on the website of the project, but I think the availability of these projects for Latvian architects and landscape designers who probably at some point would be involved with the area would be valuable.
Yeah, if you cite quote the.
Yeah, of course, obviously. Yes. Yeah, so this was one thing, and second, just practical thing, I would ask if any of you would like to give a brief interview now on your experience and your idea. Again, no pressure.
No pressure, but. So. Okay, no, okay. No means no. We're not pressuring yet. Okay, thank you.
Interview with the questions, or we should just.
No, you just sharing your experience of working on this project. And it's just in the framework, so it can be at some point used in one of the films documenting how this memorial site came to be. But again, it's just a story where you can tell your emotions working on this project. If you don't know, it's fine. It's also, I mean, we can talk like when you're done with the project. So it's all good for us. Okay. Yes. So probably you can. I can show you a lot of these.